There are two different ways to find a suspect by testing for his DNA: restriction fragment length polymorphism and short tandem repeats. These are both ways to find a suspect by testing for his DNA. The first process, which is restriction fragment length polymorphism, is when the DNA sample is broken into pieces by restriction enzymes and the resulting restriction fragments are separated according to their lengths. The process of restriction fragment length polymorphism has 5 steps. The first step is to extract the DNA nuclei from the white blood cells, then to cut the DNA into fragments, then using the Argos gel on the DNA, then using an electric current to separate and spread the DNA segments by length, and lastly, to use a nylon sheet to strain the DNA. The second way, short tandem repeats, which are sequences of DNA normally length of 2 to 5 base pairs that are repeated numerous times. For example, if CTA keeps repeating in the base pairs, all those repeats are called short tandem repeats. Short tandem repeats measures the exact number of repeating units. PCR, which is polymerase chain reaction, is used to magnify the length of the short tandem repeats. The difference between restriction fragment length polymorphism and short tandem repeats is that the short tandem repeats are easier, a lot more accurate, take less time, and don't need as much DNA because they replicate it. CODIS, which stands for Combined DNA Index System, catalogs the DNA fingerprints of people. It was first created by the Alabama Department of Forensic Sciences in 1990 as a software pilot project by the FBI. It was intended as a software platform for the analysis of restriction fragment length polymorphism profiles and their storage in searchable database. The 4 primary functions of the CODIS software are DNA profile entry and management, searching for profiles, match management, and statistical calculations. CODIS is becoming very successful, and the amounts of people being added onto the software are increasing annually. The disadvantages of using CODIS is that the DNA found at a crime scene could be mistaken for the suspect. The DNA samples are not always complete. Having records without consent is an issue, and that CODIS could be hacked. A story about an exoneree that really caught my attention was Joseph Abbott's story. In May 2nd, 1991, Joseph Abbott was charged with 2 counts of first-degree rape, 1 count of first-degree burglary, and 2 counts of first-degree kidnapping. He was charged because 2 girls said their attacker looked like Joseph Abbott, focusing the police's attention on him. When they went to issue a warrant to enter his home, they found out that he had been left the state to avoid check charges. He was then sent back to North Carolina, where he lived, and put on trial there. At court, the victims, which were the 2 girls, testified that Abbott was the man who assaulted them. All DNA tests taken were all inconclusive, giving the police no DNA evidence of who the perpetrator was. Abbott kept his alibi that he was at work and was not out during the time that the girls were raped, but he was still found guilty and was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences with an additional 110 years. This means that Abbott could have lived and died 3 times and would have still been in jail. Joseph Abbott then tried to get assistance from the North Carolina Center on Actual Innocence. They tested one of the rape kits, which excluded Abbott as one of the suspects. Abbott was then set free in 2005, having been in jail for 14 years. The real perpetrator has not been found yet, but is being searched for. After 14 years in prison, Abbott has not yet gotten his compensation for the mistake that lost him 14 years of his life.